Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our geothermal future, leveraging the subsurface to solve energy. If some of you in the audience have been joining us all week, you know that geothermal energy is an attractive baseload source of clean energy. This final panel will explore ways the subsurface can be utilized to solve a variety of challenges, from improving energy efficiency to extending growing cycles. Our phenomenal panelists lineup will explore a broad vision of what the future of geothermal might look like, including applications in space exploration, leveraging magma chambers for energy productions, implications for national defense and security, and beyond. I am your moderator, Alicia Williams, Supply Chain Lead for New Energy Technology at Shell Global Solutions. I've spent my entire career of 13 years with Shell, first half in a variety of analytical and quality assurance support roles, and the most recent as a game changer and now supporting New Energies as a supply chain lead, all with the focus on de-risking technology and commercializing novel technology. Enough about me. Let's move on to these panelists. First, I'm going to quickly introduce each, name and title only, then give each of them up to 2 minutes to tell you more about their background and their interest and more thoughts on the panel topic. First up, we have Jeff Tester, Professor of Sustainable Energy Systems at Cornell University. Dr. Merritt Brommer, Executive Director at the International Geothermal Association. Dr. Ken Wiesen, Major General, U.S. Air Force, retired. Ken is the Associate Director at Bureau of Economic Geology. Alex Richter, Managing Director at Energy Cluster Iceland and founder of Think Geoenergy. Anne Robinson Tate, President at Geotherm X Inc., where she's worked since 1985 after receiving her master's in geology focused on geothermal energy. Dr. Simon P. Todd, currently president of Caprio Energy and formerly a VP at BP. Okay, let's start with you, Jeff. Jeff, unmute, please.
Sorry, I was unmuted, but sorry about that. In addition to being professor at Cornell, I'm also Cornell's principal scientist for Earth Source Heat. I've been actively involved in geothermal research and development for about 35 years. Prior to coming to Cornell in 2009, I spent 25 years at MIT and served as director of MIT's Energy Lab and chaired an international panel that evaluated the geothermal potential of the U.S., resulting in a major report in 2007 called The Future of Geothermal Energy. I've also served as a U.S. representative for geothermal energy on the IPCC working group, and we're working hard at Cornell to attempt to decarbonize the entire energy system on the campus. That would include geothermal heating. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Merritt?
Yes, hello, and a very good evening, at least in my part of the world. It is evening to all of you, and it is such a pleasure being here. Alicia, thank you very much for the very quick introduction. I am indeed Merritt Brommer. I am the Executive Director of the IGA, which stands for the International Geothermal Association. We cover the world. We operate in 64 countries, and we have more than 8,000 members who are associating themselves with us. We think we have a very, very important role to play, not only over the past 30 years, but also in the coming decade, because this is the geothermal decade. I strongly believe that. I myself, I am from oil and gas. I am a geologist. I worked for Total, I worked for Shell, and I made the jump 3 years ago and joined the IGA as their executive director. It is a pleasure to have met so many people over the past 3 years who not only bring in the technology push, but also the market pull, because I'm convinced, and I really like to explore that not only with the panel today, but also in the coming decade, how we can create synergy between two industries, oil, gas, and the geothermal one, but also leverage on all the opportunities that the resource-based energy space has to offer to the energy transition. Thank you.
Thanks, Merritt. Ken?
Hi, Ken Wiesen here. I am a geothermal native, did my PhD in geothermal geophysics under Dave Blackwell, a name some of you may know if you've been in the field for a long time. I've worked all on the academic side in exploration, instrumentation development, resource characterization, and modeling. I'm currently co-investigator on Project Geo, along with Jamie here at the University of Texas. And in connection with the previous talk, also interested in teaching that transition from oil and gas to geothermal. Also, as mentioned, I'm a retired Major General in the Air Force, former test pilot, a lot of DT&E and program management experience, and we'll get how that ties into geothermal in a little bit. Between the military and returning to academics, I was a senior state executive with multi-billion-dollar responsibilities for infrastructure protection and disaster recovery. I'm thrilled to be here. I love seeing the new energy, pun intended, in driving innovation in geothermal. I like breaking things, including old paradigms and building anew. And also, by the way, I'm actually a much more easygoing person than my picture on the program would lead you to believe. Thank you.
I get that from your intro. Thanks. Alex?
Hi, my name is Alex Victor. I have been in geothermal for 15 years now, a little bit more than that. I guess in the early days joining N and others in the industry and first steps. I'm a lawyer by profession, ended up in geothermal through my career in banking, financing geothermal projects in the United States. After that, I founded Think Genergy simply as a tool to provide the geothermal industry a media platform that it deserved and the attention and visibility. I've been doing this ever since. And with that, accompanying the geothermal sector with an increasing change of emphasis from power to heat. And in that regards, also been the one together with the board of the IGA to hire Marit. So I'm very glad that we have been able to lure her into the geothermal sector. And maybe as a quick note, geothermal is under a lot of competition from other renewable energy technologies. And it's really kind of going to be an interesting challenge to position geothermal. And in that context, I would like to point that we have to be careful not to see geothermal only as a technical challenge, but also as a challenge of how we position it as a business, how we position it as a solution for the energy transition, and in a sense of how we put this together all as one ecosystem. So the technology, business models, and so on, and that only goes hand in hand. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today.
Yep, all great points. I hope we can dive into deeper later on. Anne, let's move on to you.
Okay, thanks, Lee. I really appreciate this event, and thanks to Jamie and to Bob Metcalf for organizing it. It's been fabulous the past few days. And hello, everyone out there. I've been working in geothermal since 1985 at Geothermex. I've probably gone through at least 300 geothermal projects. I lost count a while ago. Some of these now produce about 7 gigawatts of geothermal power, and of course, many other at earlier stages of development. One thing I really like to do is advise customers about strategy and tactics for either entering or expanding in the geothermal market. And this has included private and public developers, agencies of government, and oil and gas companies, many of whom are actually in this event. So hello. I actually serve as the global chair of WING, Women in Geothermal, right now. But I want to focus on my current interests next. And basically, the things that I try to achieve are getting more projects going. This is Geothermex's mantra. We try to support geothermal projects in any way we can. So one of the ways is risk mitigation strategies that basically reduce drilling costs. Let's do more cheap stuff before we start the expensive stuff. And I want to focus also on something that Bob Metcalf said on Tuesday as an important element of getting venture funding, or indeed any funding. We do a lot of due diligence for geothermal investments. And this has been about $14 billion worth of supporting $14 billion worth of investment in geothermal projects over the years. So we're known for this. Geothermex is known for it, but it's only about 15% of our work at any one time. The rest of the time, we're just doing geothermal work in the field and supporting developers in other ways. And I just want to comment that we need every bit of clean energy we can get right now. So I've been thinking a lot about hybrid approaches. combining different technologies within the geothermal domain, and not just heat and power and process heat and space heat, but also between geothermal and other technologies. So geothermal and desal, lithium, hydrogen, cascaded uses for heating and cooling in places with one-way loads like the Arabian Peninsula and things like that. Even geothermal and sequestration, if suitable, seals are in place, or if we can manage both in one location. And another thing is leveraging oil and gas technology for geothermal. Since we were acquired by Schlumberger in 2010, this has been a big focus for us, figuring out all that cool stuff that we could apply. But the main thing I want to end with is something Marit has also promoted here, and that is geothermal advocacy. I think we need to build more demand for our product, which is clean geothermal energy. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. And last up, Simon.
Yes, thanks, Lee. Hello to everybody in the world. My name is Simon Todd. Absolutely delighted to be here on the panel, particularly the last panel, and be the last introduced panel member. But hopefully we're not least, and we're going to have a great discussion. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a geologist, both by education and passion, educated to PhD level. I took that and had a 25-year career in BP. First third of that was as an exploration and development geologist. And then I started running pieces of business for BP with projects, operations, most of the way around the world, and ended up here in the United States in my final roles. Right now I'm pursuing a portfolio career, and I'm doing a number of projects where I'm either a senior advisor or a member of the board of companies. My professional purpose is to help companies that are minded or purposeful in their approach to the energy transition. And I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. I'm a non-exec director and actually angel investor in a solar thermal panel company based in Belfast in Northern Ireland, where I grew up. I'm a senior advisor to a next generation oil and gas company focused on the Gulf of Mexico. And thirdly, I'm an adjunct professor to the School of Earth Sciences in University College Dublin in Ireland. And my purpose there is to try and help Irish geoscience research to explore opportunities. And this is where my interest in geothermal comes in. I have an eclectic view of the energy transition. I think it's going to take lots of different technologies and business models to make the transition real and apparent. And that's everything from oil and gas through to wind, renewables, geothermal, and any other energy source. And I think critically that there's a very important aspect around efficiency and optimization. I think the world will complete the energy transition only by reducing demand on energy, such that we make do with less energy. I'm really pleased to be on this panel. I think I've been learning more about geothermal during the week, and I want to see what I can do to make geothermal part of the mix. I'm particularly curious about closed loop systems and this notion of geothermal anywhere. That sounds very exciting, and so look forward to the rest of the discussion and hope I can contribute. Thanks, Lynn.
You're welcome. And I'm sure all of you have been hearing people refer to me as Lee. I introduced myself as Alicia, but internally and friends know me as Lee. So I'm Alicia or Lee. But please, everyone, please continue to call me Lee. So next up are some predetermined questions just to get the conversation going. But as we go along, feel free to drop your audience questions in the chat and they'll get filtered to me. If you would like them geared to any particular panelist, please include that panelist name and I should get to that at the end of the panel discussion. So let's get it started. We've spent the last days talking about how to drill for, explore for, and produce geothermal energy for electricity production, but that's only 50% of the equation in geothermal. The subsurface can be leveraged for all types of useful pursuits. Merritt, I'm coming to you. And other panelists, feel free to jump in. How do you see the concept of leveraging the subsurface playing out globally in the coming years?
Thank you very much, Lee, for this fantastic opening question to start the debate, indeed. I'm also very pleased to hear that Anne is referring to advocacy, because I do think it is still so necessary that we do that. I have had the privilege over the past 3 years to travel quite a bit. Yes, pre-corona, that seemed to be quite normal to do. And I visited quite a bit of projects, and the passion and the dedication of all those individuals sometimes having to hang in there to make the project happen has really astounded me, enthusiastically as well, across the world. And it's no different coming from the US or Europe or in Africa to Asia. It's every time the same thing happening, that you have local people either opposing or either embracing that geothermal project. And it has led, I fundamentally believe, to a lack of knowledge at a regional, national, and even an overarching global level. And it is therefore still very necessary that we advocate for geothermal energy, but that we also position geothermal energy very strongly in the coming decade for sure, but also in the coming years. Because if I speak to the politicians across the globe, and yes, it's different from one end to the other, geothermal is never ever mentioned. And it means that we still have loads of work to do. Because if I look at that entire suite of resources that we have available to us in that subsurface, the most known entities are, of course, the commodities due to oil and gas and that heavy industry that has lifted up on that. The trade agreements between countries in order to produce somewhere a commodity and deliver it to a market across the globe is, of course, built into our economies. If I look at geothermal and if I look at what else is there to do within that subsurface, it's again pivotal for the energy transitions. Think about critical earth elements. Think about lithium, as we discussed, for engines, for the Teslas of this world. I mean, someone needs to build the batteries. I can continue for a very long time, but there are a few crucial elements that I would really like to highlight, and that is geothermal for baseload power, but definitely for clean heat. 50% of the energy consumption is for heating and cooling. And it can't be that we are only talking about the electrification of this planet. It's not going to keep us going to Paris in 2050. We need to attack and we need to tackle that heat market, and especially in urban areas. Cities are pivotal to the energy transition, and that means that those wells need to be drilled in and around communities where we live. And that means that that social license to operate is going to be crucial for the coming years to talk about. The storage opportunity that the subsurface offers is another very important element that I see should play a huge role in the energy transition dialogue that not only comes from the renewable pushers, but also of the policymakers of the future. And with that, I would like to end my first answer.
Thank you, Merritt. Thank you for that really concise statement. Anne, I know you're itching to comment.
I was. Thank you so much, Lee. And Merritt, I'll just say that you're spot on there. Messaging is so important. You know we have so much power, in the planet, and we can power our planet with geothermal. But we have to think both on the supply side, electricity supply, and the demand side, reducing the need for electricity. And your heating and cooling, well, mostly heating, but I suppose even in Europe, it'll be a lot of cooling as well. Comment is spot on, and I just wanted to let everyone know that Schlumberger has actually kicked off a new startup called Celsius Energy, which is about heating large residential complexes and industrial complexes in Europe where new gas connections are being banned. So This is something where they're working on a different kind of heat pump system with a very small surface footprint because things are so crowded in Europe. So Marit, speaking to your point again, cost is always an issue for us, but I feel like this moment is when we shouldn't be constrained by cost, and that's exactly what this conference is bringing to light, I think. Many have said, oh, we have to be at 2-cent power. I don't buy that at all. 2-cent power happened because people got subsidies and tax breaks, and you know, geothermal has had only a little bit of that. So let's try to put the costs aside for now. Think of our Earth as a system, just like a geothermal project is a system, from the reservoir to the wellbore to the pipelines to the power plant or to the heating system in a distributed way. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. And I know others want to comment. Ken, I'm going to give you 60 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. I'll push everyone's box a little bit here. When you're talking direct use, heating and storage, I came previously from the Center for Space Research here, so I tend to think way out there. And as we go into space, this is going to be an important factor for the wide temperature variations when you settle the moon, the Mars, as a heat sink. It changes into a direct power use as you go further out into the solar system. Hopefully we can maybe get back to that a little bit later, but I just want to throw that thought out there for the moment. Thanks.
All right, and a quick comment from you, Alex.
Yeah, just kind of to picking up where Marit left, I think it is very crucial for the geothermal sectors that we position ourselves correctly. We will not be the sole solution for specific energy demands. So we will always be an elementary part of the energy discussion and the different energy sources. So we will not replace wind, we will not replace solar, but we will be an elementary part. And while we have to be part, we have to be part of the discussion and highlight what geothermal has to offer for these different elements. So that is very important. And that comes to the point of positioning and branding geothermal. And here really is like highlighting the attribute that we are an energy source beyond electricity. No other renewable energy technology can utilize it and use it that directly. And this is important. In that context, what I also want to highlight that there are extremely blurring lines with regards to the different technology. And I think this is something that we as a geothermal sector will have to look at as well. And that is that we are moving from deep geothermal to shallow geothermal and all the different technologies in between. So that the technology transfer that we can do from utilizing energy efficiency systems to utilizing deep geothermal resources are increasingly blurry. And that provides a tremendous amount of opportunities for a geothermal. What we need to do then is to kind of identify the customers that will buy into geothermal and what we have to offer.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Let's transition a little bit. I have a lively panel here. I love it. We haven't talked much about heating and cooling at Pivot, but it's an important piece to this puzzle. Jeff, I'd love to get your thoughts since you've been heavily engaged in deep direct use over the past years. Where do you see low-hanging fruit for direct use geothermal? Are there technological and economic challenges, regulatory? What obstacles stand in the way of widespread deployment?
Thank you. Let me give you a little bit of background since we've heard so many interesting comments here from the other panelists. I was always initially focused on geothermal being used as a thermal source for generating electricity. It has all these great attributes: carbon-free or low carbon, renewable, doesn't need storage, fully dispatchable. And it is very complementary to the intermittent aspects of solar PV and wind power. So it actually could play a much larger role than it has. But by about 2010, in my long history of involvement with this resource, concerns were certainly growing about climate change and atmospheric warming due to CO2 emissions, and the importance of finding viable options to decarbonize our entire energy system became much clearer. And to answer the answer to two questions that were key in driving my own interests to take a more serious look at the potential for geothermal was, why does heating even matter? And I was focused on the US for decarbonizing? And what are the attributes of geothermal that make it appropriate and accessible and affordable source for heating to meet decarbonization goals? So quite a while ago, my students and I took a closer look at how Americans actually use energy. We evaluated published data for over 40 years and looked at how it's actually used, at what temperature it's used, created a so-called thermal spectrum for the country. And you immediately see from looking at this that about 25% of our total primary energy is used at or below the boiling point of water. And almost all of that demand today is met by burning two of our most valuable hydrocarbon fuels, oil and natural gas, at much higher temperatures, of course, than are really needed in hot water heaters and furnaces in virtually every American home or commercial building. So finding some other source, some other thermal source that's closer to the temperatures we actually need to do space and water heating is clearly a very good place for geothermal to function. And it's done that in a number of locations around the world. In fact, interestingly, you probably have heard that we have a lot of geothermal direct use in countries like Iceland and parts of Europe. But America was actually the first country in the world to install a renewable district heating system in the late 1890s. Just a few years after the Civil War in Boise, Idaho, and that system is still operational today. So what happened? We invented this in a way, and then we've lagged behind, far behind other countries, largely because we had abundant, low-cost oil and gas, very different than Iceland that didn't have abundant oil and gas, being on a volcanic island, but they utilized their high-grade geothermal resources to meet not only electricity, but over about 95% of their heating needs. There's been similar growth in France and Germany more recently, and in China, in less than a decade, after beginning its geothermal district heating program, they now have the largest amount of geothermal district heating in the world. There are a lot of economic advantages that go along with this because we can use lower temperatures. We don't have to worry as much about the limitations of how much of that can be converted to electricity. And this leads us to potentially much more competitive cost for heat, as we call it, a sort of a levelized cost for heat in comparison to other commercial resources. I can go into this in much more detail later, Lee, but I think it'd be a good place to stop now.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. And Simon, I saw, would you like to have a quick comment? Really quick.
Yeah, I'd just like to emphasize what Jeff was saying, from a Northwest European perspective. Like, for example, in Ireland, there are 400,000 households that are classified as being energy poor within energy poverty. And that's normally about heating water and heating spaces in their homes. And they do it largely by burning heating oil, which is an expensive resource in Ireland. And so I'm attracted to geothermal, both shallow and deep geothermal, as well as solar thermal, as I mentioned earlier, as a way of affordably providing heat to homes, districts, and in even larger areas. I would say one final thing is that I do think we need to be focused on the final destination of cost of supply, because we'll not get consumers to buy it if it's not going to be affordable. So I do agree that we need to acknowledge the curve that we need to go down, but we need to be clear that we're accomplishing a target that is going to be 10 or 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Simon. And you guys are taking some long minutes. Anne, I'm gonna give you a 60-second.
I'll be
Okay.
super quick, Alicia. Thank you so much. I was just going to say that low temperature and direct use and heat pump geothermal represent an amazing potential for the world, and the world is realizing it. So even though geothermics typically focuses on power grade projects, we're very much into that market, and it can be done for a very reasonable cost. And if I call that demand side geothermal, because we're reducing demand for electricity, and it's definitely at least half of the equation, if not more. It's abundant, it's widely distributed, and it's easy to develop and at a reasonable cost. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, Ken, let's explore some defense and resiliency angle for geothermal energy. How do you think DoD and other defense agencies around the world might benefit from geothermal in the coming years?
Okay, thanks, Lee. A little in this area, let me give a couple of quick background scene setting facts. Militaries around the world have a huge strategic vulnerability in that they're pretty much universally dependent on civilian power grids, and that makes people nervous. That tells me there's opportunity in this space, and it's not just military, it's any critical infrastructure. But the need for an uninterruptible power supply is crucial. And I think the military is a great case for early adopters. The reason why, we've heard a lot of angst over the past few days about where the financing comes, how you justify the cost. There's a crucial difference on a military project where effectiveness is the overriding factor, not cost effectiveness. And so I think that makes them ripe for some great public-private partnership type efforts that don't even have to produce a lot of power, but that uninterruptible power that can be installed inside the fence line that doesn't require resupply of liquids or any other materials is really exciting to me. And I'm in talks with some bases around the country, prepping the ground, so to speak, for projects along these lines. And I'll stop there and see if we have any follow-ups.
Yes, Anne would like to follow up.
Just a quick one. Thanks, Ken. I mean, you've introduced such a great topic. We've been working, obviously, at COSO for many, many years. This is at the China Lake Naval Air Weapons Station in Southern California. We've also been working around the Fallon Naval Air Station in Nevada and the Hawthorne Depot. This is work being done by the Navy Geothermal Program Office, which is really great. There's definitely a push towards this resilient energy. And when we approached Fallon and China Lake about Forge, we actually put in bids for both areas and didn't succeed, obviously. The Utah side is now Forge. The whole issue of resilient power was very much on the CO's minds. And we believe geothermal has a great role to play. And I'll just remind you that in Jurassic Park, they flipped on that geothermal power station with a switch. So it's got to be resilient. Thanks.
Back to you, Ken.
Oh, okay. Just briefly, yes, that's a good point, Anne, that the Navy does have DoD's geothermal office. It is a very small office. They are underfunded by orders of magnitude to really make this happen, but they're a great partner to help us make the point, I think. And Andrew Sabin, I've known for a long time, the lead scientist out there. I hope some of them are on the conference today and listening. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and Jeff, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just in addition to the points that were made about military bases, I totally agree. But there are also other places where infrastructure is already in place, and a lot of large universities and sort of centralized sections that have district heating or combined heat and power. And those would be places that would be more appropriate as first adopters for district heating. The infrastructure costs of geothermal district heating are significant, and they're different than certainly making electricity where you can go on an existing grid. In this case, you're delivering hot water to buildings and places. So there are places for that. That was one of the things that attracted me to leave MIT and come back to Cornell, because they have such a system, and it's also well instrumented, and so we can use a combination of managing energy demand and optimizing the use of a variety of temperatures, which is another great feature of geothermal heating, that you don't have to all do it just for heating at high temperatures. You can cascade it through lower temperatures. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Alex.
I was making a lot of comments here or notes here on the side, but in the end, it comes down to economic opportunities, what geothermal provides. And talking about creating district heating systems for places that already exist naturally is challenging. But we have so many tremendously successful cases on the impact of that geothermal projects can have. I mean, I just just mentioning local off-takers that kind of develop geothermal for their use. So we have these examples of some projects in France, for example, in Belgium, where companies actually asked geothermal developers to drill a well for the heat supply that this well can provide. And we have these pictures of drilling rigs right in the middle of greenhouse operators in the Netherlands. I mean, we have basically demand-driven geothermal projects provided where the geothermal sector has been pushed by off-takers because geothermal is such a great value proposition. And I think this is the impact that we need to sell much more on. And the interesting part is really the economic opportunities provided by geothermal. Is I think no other technology can provide that wide field of economic opportunities like geothermal, both in job creation locally, but also in the impact in what it provides in both electricity, heat. Yes, we talk about lithium, etc., but there are all kinds of different elements, and the economic impact that can have locally is tremendous. I mean, you've seen these examples in Hungary, where a local community with just 2 wells has been able to attract big industries to move to that community. And then these are good examples. What comes first is another question, but there is demand, and if we can fuel that demand, we can develop geothermal.
Thanks, Alex. Staying on you, I recently read about the IDDP wells in Iceland and magma drilling. It kind of sounds science fiction. It was pretty cool. Can you tell us more about what is going on the energy cluster in Iceland in this area and what the future holds for Iceland and geothermal?
Of course. I mean, Iceland naturally as a volcanic country has been blessed with resources that a lot of other countries would love to have. So we are in a fortunate position. But in that case, we're also providing a fantastic opportunity as a technical playground, so to speak, to test certain elements. And that's where the Iceland Deep Drilling project kind of comes into the game. And that project, the idea was to kind of utilize supercritical temperatures of between 400 and 600 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit. That is, I think, between 700 and 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. And the idea is to utilize these high temperatures and figuring out a way to thereby increase the output per well. So instead of having to drill 10, 15 wells for an output of, let's say, 1,000 megawatts, you would kind of drill maybe 2 or 3. That's kind of essentially in a nutshell, the idea. Yes, this is a technology research project. They have, the first well was drilled into magma. It hit magma with about 400 degrees Celsius and more, with tremendously a lot of pressure. And the second well that was drilled is also facing a lot of acidity issues, temperatures, huge pressure, and that's something where technology will have to be developed or equipment will have to be developed to utilize those resources. But the idea is essentially to create a lot of energy from a single well. And naturally with oil and gas technology, drilling, super deep or deeper for these high temperatures provides a lot of opportunities. How that will play out, we will have to see, but it's definitely an interesting element.
Thanks so much. Anne, you have comment?
As usual, yes. I would just say that Iceland isn't the only place with this divergent margin situation and where this kind of energy can be tapped. I've been thinking a lot about the Red Sea in that context as well. And there's some very near offshore zones that could be tapped for major geothermal for Saudi Arabia. We're having interest from the other side of the Arabian Peninsula, from Qatar, from Kuwait, from UAE, as you guys know. So, but on that divergent margin, one of my dreams is to see offshore geothermal. And I know Jamie thinks it's a crazy idea, but nevertheless, if we could do it economically, maybe not too deep water, and tap into a major source, this could be a game changer for Saudi Arabia, and they could stop burning their oil and instead take on a clean a portfolio. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Alex, did you have a little bit of comment back?
Maybe just one comment. I mean, just to put it as an example, I mean, we have New Zealand and Iceland facing now the issue of a dropping energy demand. So how that will affect geothermal in the context of power will have to be seen, but it's a big nightmare for our two nations, which puts a stronger emphasis on the heat utilization of geothermal and what it can provide, and how far we are able to kind of maybe adapt the economic model from a power-based model to mostly driven on heat for geothermal will have to be seen. But these are challenges faced by two kind of volcanic resource driven geothermal countries. So that will be a challenge that we have to see.
All right, thank you, Alex. Now let's look at the other end of the spectrum. Simon, I'm coming to you. Low temperature or low enthalpy geothermal. I know you've got an interest in low enthalpy in Ireland. Can you tell us how you see that playing out and why some locations in the world might be a better fit for low enthalpy than these higher temperature plays that we've been discussing these past days?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I was smiling when Alex was talking about the benefits of hot resources in Iceland. The only thing that I can think of that is similar in Ireland to Iceland is that Game of Thrones was filmed in both locations. Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Ireland as an island is quite far from the nearest divergent margin. It's low enthalpy. It's 25 degrees centigrade per kilometer geothermal gradient, and yet this notion of geothermal heat and power that can work with 200 degrees centigrade, which would be 4 kilometers depth, seems possible. So Ireland's got a couple of different problems, energy problems that are related to costs and related to carbon emissions. One of them I've already talked about. The other one is providing a clean baseload to the grid. Compared to the United States, it's an infinitesimally smaller grid problem. And the island actually has been making a lot of progress on renewables penetration into the grid. Northern Ireland, for example, sometimes reaches 40–50%, and there are actions now being taken to improve the resilience of the grid. However, we still need a cleaner baseload than the natural gas, coal, and peat that's currently being used. And so I'm attracted to the low enthalpy closed loop system idea to provide electrical base load to support the variable wind and less so, of course, solar power. So those are the two opportunities I see for Northwest European countries like Ireland. Something about residence, commercial building, heating and cooling, and something about base load backup to an otherwise variable grid.
Thank you, Simon. Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just to remind people that there are large sections of the United States that have very low gradients and incredibly high heat loads. Just to give you an example, on the cold winter days that we have in Ithaca, where Cornell is located, the electricity demand is more or less uniform across the campus of about 30 megawatts continuously throughout the year. And the heating demand goes up to 80 or 90 megawatts during that period. And if you were to look at the carbon footprint of a lot of the states in the northern tier, you would find that most of their carbon footprint is not due to electricity. It's due to the heating demand they have. So dealing with low temperatures and low gradients is something that provides an opportunity. And also, as Anne has pointed out, the sort of integration of heat pumps into that scenario as well works well. The company ENGIE has done this in Paris and expanding their unit, and it's something that we would utilize, which even allows us to use very low temperatures very effectively with some renewable electricity as you decarbonize a large system. So it's an attractive place to integrate geothermal at various levels, low and high grade, low and high temperature, etc. Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Jeff. And Anne, you want to follow up?
Just super quickly, I would just say that, Jeff pointed out before that university campuses are a great place to try new technology. And university campuses in the northern United States particularly are doing amazing integrated heat pump, solar, wind systems to heat and cool their campuses. And the stuff that they're doing, to me, is really amazing. And this is where demand-side geothermal really has a place. Thanks.
Thank you. Merritt, inviting you to dream. What's the crazy idea that you hope comes to fruition in geothermal over the next 10 to 20 years?
So first of all, I go with Anne to Saudi, and we're going to drill those offshore wells. Because
Can I come?
Yes, you can. Because let's be honest, I come from the Netherlands. The big issue on the balance sheet for all those operators in the North Sea, and I know this is a tiny sea compared to the big Arabian Peninsula, but I'll start to dreaming small. If I look at the decommissioning costs to get rid of those platforms, of those assets, why on earth are we not looking into repurposing those assets? So that's my first crazy dream, and so I am with you. We need demand and we need offshore. But without, let's say, the crazy dreams, I really like the blue sky scenarios of looking for ultra deep magma chambers, looking for closed loop going, as Jamie always says, the 10K and the 300 degrees. I mean, these are the dreams that we need to pursue. It's a vision we need to test. Maybe not in Southwest Texas, because I fundamentally disagree that we need to test it somewhere in the desert where there are only jackrabbits. I think we need to test it very nicely in a great environment where we understand that there are people and that we do it for the people. Because if we are just pushing technology out there, I don't think it will ever resonate well with politicians who are elected by the local people. Because ultimately, over the past 3 years, the mindset shift that I have observed in geothermal is that the energy transition takes place in the town halls. It's the mayor who decides on the budget for the cities. So in that case, this is dreaming big, this is offshore, this is closed loop, this is everything. But ultimately, I think the big dream is that we see 2 expandable, scalable markets. It's via electricity for sure, but that clean heat, that's absolutely scalable, is marketable, there is demand, and there are people who are in need to be decarbonized, both their, let's say, their households, their commercial businesses, residential areas, and new properties that are to be built. But also, if I look, and yes, I go back to the EU here now, because if I look at the Green Deal that's currently on the table, I see 27 countries in the EU who have a lot of work to do in the coming, let's say, 30 years. And the majority is still focused on electricity. And I just can't believe that we are wasting the opportunity to decarbonize the heating sector without geothermal. So dreaming big, I say we do offshore first. We then go to the moon, because I would really like to hear Ken's vision on how to explore the planets. I once had a very nice intern. He was devoted to space exploration, and he showed me everything about the Mars lander. So if Elon ever reaches Mars, I think we should source his vehicles over there with geothermal. Thank you.
Thank you. And slight spin on that, what do you think is the most realistic and near-term entry point for folks in the oil service space in geothermal? What's the low-hanging fruit?
Is that for me, Alicia?
Yep. Yes,
okay.
it is.
Okay, great. Well, the low-hanging fruit are, as I think Merritt mentioned one of them, all those North Sea wells, and all the other offshore wells. What are they going to do with them? The balance sheets of companies have a big weight on them right now. So that's one thing. I think if we put our minds to it, some of these wells are really deep, and they don't have to be offshore either, but there's still P&A, plugging and abandoning wells is a nuisance. Could we rip out the tubing? Could we recomplete? Could we perforate? The hell out of the heck out of the production interval where the temperature is right and where the permeability is good. We can immediately produce from these wells if we recomplete. Now, it isn't a big deal, but it is some expense. Let's put it together economically and see, where we stand. if we take this recompletion path seriously, what would it mean? So that's, that's one of the things that I think oil and gas could do. But I do think that oil and gas people need to think about it slightly differently than they currently think about their product, which is, you get it out of the ground and you send it somewhere. Maybe your own refinery, maybe somebody else's, maybe it's in a pipeline or a truck. It goes somewhere and somebody pays for it. There's two things that are fundamentally different. One is that the oil and gas industry, until very recently, has always had a very willing market for its product. Geothermal isn't that way. So we need that advocacy piece, the great messaging about geothermal, to make politicians and ordinary people, as Marit said in the city, in the town hall meeting, sort of embrace geothermal. But I just would say, back to the system approach, I think oil and gas people have to remember that there's this topside facility, if they're thinking power or even heating, that they have to deal with to distribute this energy and to sell it into the market. So those are a couple of things, probably more about oil and gas companies and how they might be thinking later, but I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. And to be fair, I want to let all of the panel dream. I'm going to go to Alex first. I think you want to comment, and then you can follow up, Alex, with what you hope comes to fruition in geothermal over the next 10 to 20 years. Alex?
Yeah, and maybe just jumping into where Anne was putting up and where Marit was going. The key point here is we're talking about geothermal as an opportunity for the oil and gas sector, and I sense that we mostly talk about services being sold into the geothermal sector instead of the oil sector. I would turn this around and I would kind of ask the oil sector to invest in geothermal development, to really invest in geothermal development, in basically the development of what needs to be done. We could drill so much more if we would have the investment, which would essentially bring those people back to work. So we need the money from the investment from the oil and gas companies. So that is absolutely crucial. And by that, they created the market that they understand, the subsurface. That is very crucial. And in that context, the oil and gas sector knows so much about lobbying, about advocacy, about marketing, about positioning, branding, media, communication, where we need that experience in the geothermal sector and to bring it forward. And we need investment in those elements as well. I mean, I have to admit, the geothermal sector has not been good enough in drumming the drums. We have not been good in promoting what geothermal has to offer. And in that context, we need, as the geothermal sector, we need to talk about what we are doing, the projects. We are not good enough in talking about these things. And we can learn from the oil and gas sector about that, how to deal with opposition in a positive way. And we have learned the hard way in geothermal what we can do with stakeholder engagement. And there the oil and gas sector can also learn from us in the sense of dealing with the subsurface, with the green product that we provide. So moving from that on to the dream for geothermal, I mean, my dream would be that we actually tap into the low-hanging fruit in geothermal, and that is low temperature resources, aquifers that we're not utilizing today. The technology play about EGS and all these other things are tremendous opportunities down the road and need investment now, but we have so much untapped potential in geothermal today, and it's just due to the lack of funding and available resources that we're not able to develop these projects. So that's the thing where I would dream that a lot of these companies that are currently pushing oil and gas sector development will invest in those projects and driving these projects forward. And to tap into the notion of space exploration, there was an article quite a while ago that we were drilling on Mars. There was like this rover sent to Mars and it started drilling. And I was like thinking at that time, and I wrote an article about this, like how on earth can it be that we sent a little drilling technology up to space and remotely control this drilling on that planet for whatever purpose it is, and we are not able to kind of drill on Earth down to 4,000 meters successfully and increase the success rate of drilling. So I mean, this is something where I would dream that like a lot of that space, I ideas are being implemented on Earth today.
All right, thank you, Alex. Simon, are you ready to dream?
They are always ready to dream. So I'm a business person as well as a geologist and somebody interested in geothermal, and so my line of thought is how do we make profitable businesses out of geothermal, and I think Merit nailed it. That there's two real sectors here. There's one about electricity generation, and then there's one about heat as a service, and they're two very different business models. And I think that's why oil and gas is struggling to engage on this, because they don't really see the business model, at least through the lens that they currently hold of high risk but high returns in oil and gas. I've started to dream about a business venture that is focused on pilot projects in Ireland. And what I'm thinking about is there are two coal-fired power stations left operating in the island of Ireland. And one of them has just announced that it's converting to natural gas together with some renewable deployment. And the other one is due to close down in the next few years. So I've started to wonder, could those sites be repurposed to be energy parks where solar, wind, they're both sitting on coastlines, by the way, solar, wind, geothermal, solar thermal can all contribute to an entrepreneurial energy park where commercialization pilots are tried out and tested and delivered. So that's what I'm starting to. I like to dream big, but act small. And my act small is let's get some things done in pilots.
Thank you, Simon. Ken, coming to you now.
All right. Thank you, Lee. First, briefly, yes, the InSight lander on Mars is trying to drill. They've had some real problems. Their intent is to get to 5 meters down. And I remind everybody that drilling is to install a heat probe and do a heat flow measurement on Mars. So there is geothermal research ongoing off the Earth. As far as crazy vision, what I have, I think, really is not crazy. It's achievable. And that is, ubiquitous geothermal energy. And the model in my head for that is the wind energy model that I've seen here in Texas in the last few decades. Texas is not historically seen as an environmentally friendly state, although that may be changing. But Texas shot into the national lead with installed wind generation due to good business-friendly policies from state government that fostered that approach. And I think that is another one of those advocacy items and a model that we can use around the world to get the investment going in the favorable regulation. So I'm hoping that in 20 years, we see installed geothermal showing up everywhere like wind power does. Thank you.
Okay, I see you, Ann. Let me be fair. Jeff, come on and dream for me. Unmute, Jeff.
Yeah, I got it. I've heard so many good things, I don't really have to say much more, but I think it is important to comment a little bit on what I think is a need for public-private partnerships in this area. The oil and gas industries are essentially extractive industries, as Simon's pointed out, where a rapid recovery of invested capital is important. That's not going to be the case in geothermal district heating. Certainly hasn't been the case in Iceland and in France and other countries that are doing this. So that will involve a lot of different intervention that has existed in this country, in the US, for a long time. But today things are changing. This may be a really good time for this. There are 22 current U.S. governors in the United States that have taken a strong position on decarbonizing their energy system. They can't do this in most of those states without geothermal heating and geothermal electricity, for that matter, in the states that have this higher electric load, particularly the western and southwestern regions. But I don't see this happening unless there is a more sense of urgency on the part of both state and federal governments to work together with companies to work on this specifically. So such incentives, and you hate to use incentives, but a lot of our business, and as well as the oil and gas business, has benefited from this over the long term. But production tax credits, investment tax credits for the long term, not just on a 1 year-to-year renewal basis, but on a multi-year renewal basis, what it's going to take. And I hope the governors actually will be realistic about this, because if they want to do it, they're going to have to be serious about geothermal. One other thing I might make about the space program, let's get NASA to run the geothermal public outreach program. They know how to do it. And I think it would be a very good thing.
Can I just bump in for a moment?
Sure.
We have video and audio issues. We cannot switch videos at the moment. So just so that everybody's aware that things are flowing very unstable at the moment. So maybe just hold a moment till things still stabilize here, and it goes for both me and Malcolm.
But is the audio still working? We can go forward with just audio.
Yes, continue with just audio, Lee. We've
Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anne, you wanted to follow on?
Yes, and I've already revealed my Saudi Arabia geothermal dream about the Red Sea, but I have another dream, and this dream is for Indonesia. And if anyone from Indonesia is mad enough to be awake at this time, I will say selamat malam, and hope that you get some sleep. But my dream for Indonesia is that they will burn less coal and recognize that they have a significant base of low-hanging fruit in the form of medium temperature geothermal resources that would be perfectly fine for binary power plants. And I think this is something that's really been ignored in Indonesia. They're all about flash pans, high temperature, going way up the volcanoes, and that works. But there's so many other places where it could be easier to access, and if the Indonesians would accept the lower temperature and the binary cycle. And I know it's being thought about, and I know Ormat, obviously a big player in the binary space, is in the Indonesian market, so it may happen. But I just wanted to express my dream for Indonesia, which is a country with massive geothermal potential on at several levels, temperature-wise speaking. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. And now I can move to a few audience questions. This one not to anyone in particular, so please just let me know who'd like to answer. How do we scale geothermal research and development to move the needle? A consortium has been suggested in Pivot2020. What do you think about that approach? Any takers? No takers? I'll put somebody on the spot. Thank you, Alex.
I'm not the best person to comment on technical elements for geothermal, but as I again, want to push the emphasis on understanding geothermal as an ecosystem, and the industry as an ecosystem, we need research and entrepreneurial support on different elements of the industry, not just the technical part. We need business schools to kind of understand how business models can define geothermal and what it has to offer. It is about media, about branding, about positioning. All these different elements are crucial as well. About financing, we need innovation in financing geothermal projects. Working on risk mitigation, on insurance products, all kinds of elements. All elements that are crucial in geothermal development. And on the technical side, yeah, but that needs also go hand in hand with everything else. We have to stop working with the engineering, the technical part in silos, separate from the business element of things. That needs to work way much closer together. And in that sense, I really want to emphasize that we put research and understand research as a much wider field than just technical issues.
Absolutely. I spent about 5.5 years of my career preaching that same thing, so I identify with that. Ken, you have some comment?
Yes. This is another area that I think it's a fairly easy pivot from the oil and gas industry into geothermal. Here we're an oil state at the university, and the University of Texas is heavily engaged. We have well over a dozen industry associations between the Bureau of Economic Geology here, the Petroleum Engineering Department and such, that have very flexible structures for protecting and sharing intellectual property and all those other concerns that business investors have. But I don't think that's a wheel that's particularly hard to reinvent in this case. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anne?
Yeah, just echoing some of the things that Alex was saying. We need a broader interest group in geothermal to really make a go of it. So my suggestion to all the great oil and gas companies who are looking for something to do, and Jamie, this is your whole raison d'etre for Pivot, is that we keep this dialogue going. This event to me has been quite a catalyst to bring our industries together, and I think that was the purpose. But there's so much technology on the oil and gas side and so much interest on the geothermal side. But the geothermal industry has been inward looking for many, many years, for way too long. And so I want to just laud Alex for saying that we have to consider, as I said, a systems approach, and that means the economics of projects as well. So I think we can work on all these things together and come up with lots of solutions. And I would just want to say to those who are doing closed loop geothermal, I really hope this works. It's a big game changer. Even though the GeoVision study didn't cover it, they did bring a vision for the United States of geothermal that I think, desperately need. And we should take that sort of collaborative approach forward from this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. Together is always better. Another audience question. On Wednesday, Carl Pope mentioned geothermal is perhaps 20% of the energy mix. This will represent a huge pivot. Can the panel comment on how we get from 1% to 20% cheaply and efficiently? Any takers? Let's go with you, Jeff.
I have the mute off. Great. So I think, you've heard some of the suggestions already. I mean, geothermal heat pumps certainly are easy to imagine that they could be quite scalable. We have over 2 million heat pump units in the US already, but we need many more. This was pointed out in GeoVision as well for the US. But I think that you've got to go after, and you've heard this many times in this session today, the low-hanging fruit, the lower temperature resources that are close to the surface that could be utilized in systems that already have some infrastructure. And that will allow things to be witnessed at a demonstration scale. And this is sort of, if you build it, I think, people will come and take a look at this and say this would work. I'd love to see the governor of New York, for instance, who has been very bullish on decarbonization, be able to be in a ribbon cutting ceremony at Cornell if we actually can produce an earth source heating system for the campus, because that is his land grant institution. That's the kind of partnership I think that's going to have to exist. People that are policymakers at a high level have to understand that their leadership and their support will bring together these entities from the private sector as well. They can't just do it on their own. And I totally agree with Anne. We've been far too introspective as an industry. We need to reach out in a very different way to make this work. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's see. I'll pick one more question. Considering some inherent risks in fracking for EGS and global ban, will be still beneficial to focus on EGS, or it is in best interest of geothermal industry to shift focus on other methods to be able to compete with solar and wind? How much has the fracking debate damaged the drive to advocate for geothermal drilling? Anne?
I would say that the fracking debate has spilled over into geothermal, but I don't feel that it's something that cannot be mitigated. This point, If we are to do enhanced geothermal systems, which do represent a significant potential, as well as closed loop and other solutions, we will be stimulating geothermal wells. Now, should the public tolerate a little bit of induced seismicity? As a scientist, I hope to say yes. As a realist, I think it's going to be an issue that we have to manage very, very well. And I'll just give you a short story from the Fallon Forge project, where we went into the community and spoke directly to this issue. And I just want to tell you that they were so interested in geothermal. They said, what's a little seismicity? We don't care about it. But now they're in a country where they get earthquakes, so they're a little bit used to seismicity. So this may not be an easy sell everywhere, but in some places it will be. And this is why I think the need for kind of a global favorability for EGS study needs to be done. There's deep open fractures we could tap without doing anything. There's other places where the crust is ready to be stimulated in the right way for EGS, and some of those places will be, you know, maybe away from some populations. Start there and work your way in, get a knowledge base, and we can crack that nut. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you. And it's looking like we're coming to the end of our discussion, but before I close out the panel, I want to give each panelist 30 seconds to a minute for any last thoughts. Please keep it brief. Let's start with you, Jeff. Unmute, Jeff.
Classic problem here, sorry. It's been great to be part of this panel, and I think it just encourages me to think about all the attributes of geothermal, what they can deliver to a lot of countries. And certainly I'm focused on the US right now, but it's clear that we need this globally in a much more active, proactive environment. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Merritt?
Thank you. Yes, for me it is. My last words will be around creating this coalition of the willing, and that coalition of the willing is. Yes, it's about technology, but really, in my work at the IGA, the conversation that I'm having, it is still all about getting ourselves up there in that awareness advocacy space, meaning that the coalition of the willing should be with the IGA and with all the national associations really target our political leadership and our UN, World Banks, EU, and everybody out there who has a meaningful say in getting those NDCs, so the National Development Targets, to Paris in 2050, because if we're not mentioned at that high level as a technology of choice to reduce those emissions, we're not going to get there. And with that, I would like to thank you for this fantastic week. And Jamie, my compliments to you for getting us all together, because it has been quite diverse, the conversations, from the technology to the industry to the politicians that we need to lobby for. But I thank you for that, bringing us together. Thank you.
Well said. Ken?
Yes, I also want to add my thoughts. This has been a very stimulating week. Thank you, Jamie, and the rest of the crew that have put this together. This has really been great, and it re-energizes me even more. My main thought is this is doable. This is not a crazy dream. We're on the cusp of a lot of threads of technology change and revolution coming together here to enable ubiquitous geothermal energy. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and being a part of it. Thank you.
All right, Alex.
Putting down all those notes. So just to keep it, well, try to keep it relatively short. I think the crucial element, and I think that's part of the discussion here, is that we need to dwell on the long-term value of geothermal and the long-term thinking that is required to develop geothermal. And we have so many fantastic case studies of a long-term vision of mayors and different businesses that invested into geothermal and bearing the fruits of those investments. And I think we need to then kind of be more agile to kind of communicate those stories, to highlight what it can offer. And with that, we receive the attention that geothermal clearly deserves. And in that context, media, the way we reach out, is absolutely crucial. So we need to talk about more of what we do. We need to brand geothermal correctly, and we can only do this together. And that is the crucial part, and really kind of like the coalition that Marit mentions really is like we have so many like-minded people. We need that fresh input from additional people that kind of help us to achieve the dream that we all have, is to make geothermal a valid and an elementary part of the energy transition of this world.
Thanks, Alex. Anne?
Okay, I'm ready. I just want to build on that long-term comment that Alex made and note that the place where I studied got my MSc degree and studied for that in New Zealand, Wairake, has been operating for 61 years now. So you talk about long-term. This is a resource and an asset that keeps on giving. So keep that in mind. But I just want to say, for about 25 years, I've been waiting for this pivot. Thanks, Jamie. You made it happen, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'll just leave you with a couple of notes. You know, solar didn't start by being cheap. Maybe it started by being pretty damn expensive. It got subsidies, it got lots of support, and geothermal needs that too. And so I understand that we're addicted to cheap energy, at least here in the United States. That's certainly the case. But if we are going to face our future together, I think we need to invest more in geothermal. And whether that comes from government, oil and gas companies, other sources, development banks, we need to invest in geothermal. So storage to me isn't the solution. Batteries can't be everywhere. We could not have enough batteries for this planet. So let's go back to geothermal, which can be flexible and deliver according to a load schedule, and also serves as a great base load source to stabilize grids like here in California, where solar is making the grid operation really hectic. So thanks again, and I'll end there.
Thanks, Anne. Simon?
Oh wow! How can I follow? How can I follow that? That was great from my fellow panelists. Yeah, thanks. So I think the big possibility is a significant contribution to eradicating energy poverty in a clean way. We've talked about a couple of examples of developing countries. So there's a possibility here about aiding the development of developing countries, but with clean energy. And energy poverty, as I said earlier, also occurs in so-called developed countries. So that's the big possibility that I leave with. The act small, I think, is some kind of lighting a number of entrepreneurial public-private ventures in different parts of the world to get the full blaze alight. So yeah, thanks to Jamie for inviting me, putting this together. It's been fabulous, and Lee, great job on moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. And thank you to everyone. Thanks for showing up. Thank you, of course, to our panelists. Thank you for our really amazing behind the scenes crew, Malcolm and Rob, for keeping things going, production rise, even through glitches, and really remaining cool and keeping it all together. Thank you very much to you, the audience, for staying engaged and showing up in the questions. We're all here to learn together. And by learning, I think that we're doing. When we all leave today, we'll keep this conversation going. And I can't help but think about my favorite Maya Angelou quote, do the best you can. And when you know better, do better. I'm going to pass it over to one of the most impressive people that I know, Jamie Beard. I'm not just saying that. Jamie's passion in clean energy is the reason why she dedicated herself to pulling off this week-long discussion. One day, I hope to wear half the cape that she wears. I thank you, Jamie, and now invite you to say some concluding remarks for Pivot 2020. Thank you.
Hey, thanks everybody. I am so embarrassed. I thank you for all the compliments, but seriously, all the call outs, just no more. Let's just get shit done. So I have to say, this has been so awesome. It's so beyond exceeded my expectations. Pivot did. We don't have the total numbers yet because I haven't downloaded the data from today, but 6,000 people watched this week these panels, and hundreds more so far have listened to the recordings. That's amazing. That is so incredible. That's awesome. And as Lee said, yeah, let's keep that going. The motto for Pivot is kicking off the geothermal decade. And, that's not just a slogan, it's a goal, right? So we're at 2020. We got 10 years to move the needle. Let's move it really fast. And this is something, a personal belief that I have, that the oil and gas industry is the single largest and greatest asset we have on the planet to making geothermal happen anywhere at oil and gas scale fast, right? And so let's press the gas. Let's seize the opportunity to collaborate. Let's make it happen. And let's make sure we're benchmarking ourselves, right? So let's do this every year for 10 years, and we have a gigantic party at 2030. If we are truly able to leverage the capabilities of the oil and gas industry, which are absolutely immense, even if we just leverage 20% of the capabilities of the oil and gas industry, we can nip these problems. These are solvable problems. So let's do it. A lot of people have reached out to me, hundreds, and I'm very sorry if I am not able to respond to all of you, but asked me, how you can help and how you can get involved. And I would say the number one way that you can do that is if you are excited about what we've been talking about at Pivot, use that as an opportunity to advocate and recruit others to the ideas, particularly if you are, as many of you are, in the oil and gas industry. Right now, there is a significant movement in the oil and gas industry. There's a lot of energy around these topics. And if you are, if you're on board and you think this is cool, go back and tell every single one of your colleagues and your managers and your bosses. Tell everybody that you know of to watch these sessions. They're all recorded. You can go to the website, you click on the session you want, there's a recording there. I know there are some missing, we'll fix that. But make sure everybody that might be excited about this watches this. And then if you don't agree with some of the stuff, debate it. Get some meetings going in your companies, talk about it, figure out how your expertise can apply it, push, right? Everybody, particularly folks with oil and gas expertise and knowledge. And if you're in entities now, you have a platform, and that platform is extraordinarily powerful no matter where you are in the organization. So use it. When it comes to, folks outside of the oil and gas industry, that includes people like me. They're, lawyers, business people, regulatory folks, policy experts, think tanks, NGOs. Think about this, right? How could this look for you, given your set of circumstances and interests in the future? And, from a legal perspective, who owns heat? That is an amazingly interesting question that no one has an answer to right now. But imagine if in the next decade, the oil and gas industry decides to just snap and decide that heat is their new energy asset. All of the sudden, 100 years of oil and gas jurisprudence is thrown into question. What do we do? Let's think about this now. And when it comes to interdisciplinary efforts across the board, same thing goes for business models, same thing goes for policies, removing regulatory barriers. Let's start thinking about it now so we can go fast, everything in parallel, so we can do this in a decade. So consortium. Consortium has come up a lot, and I love it. It's come up in many panels. For those of you who are close to me or who have spoken with me over the last year, you're aware of the term Project Interspace. That's my terminology for this concept of coming together globally in a big, international, interdisciplinary effort. Let's get defense agencies, let's get space agencies, let's get energy departments, governments, let's get everybody to the table and start talking about it, right? And so, again, a lot of inquiries about consortia, how to help, how to get involved. one thing that I will say, yesterday I put out a post on LinkedIn inviting people to comment on what a consortium would look like, what kind of model could be followed or models could be combined to make this happen and to make it work. Where are the flaws? Who should we include? Please jump into those discussions and do them publicly. Post your comments so people can respond and interact. And I would like you to know that, when it comes to the audience of these things, people are watching, governments are watching, think tanks are watching, energy consultancies are watching, politicians are watching, oil and gas is watching. So, understand that when you do put these comments out there, it gets conversation started and it would be very helpful. So please, I would encourage everyone to join the discussion on that if you have thoughts. All right, and if you're disappointed that Pivot is over, as I am, I have some thoughts for you there. So in the fall, the Geothermal Resources Council has its fall conference. Go to that. It's virtual. Keep it going. You can join another conference and keep the conversations going. Now, if you're sad that the GRC is over, which I will be as well, in the spring, there's the World Geothermal Conference. Go to that. I mean, you keep it going, get engaged with these existing entities like the IGA that runs the Congress, the Global Congress, and keep things moving and stay engaged in the conversation. And if you're sad the World Geothermal Congress is over, well, hell, come to Pivot 2021. We'll do it next summer. And what we'll do every year is benchmark. Right? So pivot next year. Where have we been? What have we accomplished? What have we done? And what do we want to do by 2022? And we will do that until we achieve the goals and push. So with that, okay, thank you very much. Awesome. This has been really fun. Signing off and see you all at Pivot 2021.